How many times have you heard the mantra, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me? Have you found that to be true? Yeah, of course not. Words have tremendous power to harm and to heal. So our conversation is about the importance of words and how we hear them influences whether we open up more and we share our ideas and thoughts, or whether we shut down and we stay quiet. So I'm Sylvia Henderson, host of Idea Success TV, which is what you're watching right now, and the founder of the Idea Success Network. And because I'm about ideas and how we implement them, and I brought my 20 years of corporate leadership work where I've helped my employees get their ideas into action, I now do that for entrepreneurs and for small companies. And to answer that question, I invited Renee Canali, a coaching colleague and a friend of mine, and a member of my Idea Mind team, mastermind group, to give us some insight into how the words we use influence our reactions, our acceptance of other people's input, and our perceptions of whether to move forward with our ideas. And so, Renee, welcome.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you.
We do a lot of work with words in our mind teams.
We do.
And what sparked me to have this conversation is that how we say things to each other really influences how much we open up, how we trust each other, how many risks we're willing to take with what's dear to our hearts. So I wanted to kind of ask you, why are words so important, and how can we be better at using them?
Well, I think that's a really good question to ask, because a lot of times people make assumptions that we all understand a word to have the same meaning. And we're not always talking about just the definition of a word. Yeah. We're actually talking about, do we understand the emotion behind it? Do we understand what is being, said the way that it's being said? And it's not always the tone or whatever, but it's the meaning that we've attached to it over time. So it's really important to know what you're saying, how you're saying it, and who you're having the conversation with.
Okay. So a little bit, so I'm thinking, all right. In fact, you hit 2 or 3 points that I ought to dissect each. But so what about the context? Because that's kind of what you're talking about, the context of the words, meaning where we are, to whom we're speaking, probably the tone of voice, even the tonality, how we're saying those words. Man, that was bad, versus, man, that was bad.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, in conversations with people, especially when you're talking about an idea that you have or something that is important to you, it's also important to understand that who you're talking to, what level of, trust or do we have a common enough, connection that we're safe enough to use words, and then if they don't come across the way that we want, to actually talk about that for a minute before we go on.
I know that's the value of our mind teams, is that we know each other. We've built that trust over time. So when something hits one of us kind of off, we're comfortable enough to say, Renee, okay, this is what I'm feeling from what you're saying. Right. And to find out whether it's the same thing as what you meant. Exactly.
So in the context, a lot of times when you're expressing an idea, especially if it's an opinion or an idea that's important to you, and you want to really make sure that somebody's receiving it the way that you intend, you can use you can use different techniques, one of which from Judith Glazer's work on conversational intelligence. It's called priming. It's just really like setting the rules. Like setting the intention for the conversation is, I want to share this with you, and I'm feeling really vulnerable about it, and what I would like from you is not the critique or criticism. What I'm looking for is, because we all come with our own agendas, even if we're open to helping other people.
Yeah. And probably that agenda can even be as recent as your drive into, your commute in, or what your mood is when you're hearing that.
Right. Or a deadline that's coming up after the conversation or whatever. We tend to throw a whole bunch of things in a little tiny basket, expecting that it's all going to be taken care of.
Is there a way to be conscious that you're in a certain space, in maybe a negative space at the moment, and so that you're not ready to receive a message? It hits us sometimes, we don't even think about it, but is there a way to be conscious of that?
Well, I think that explaining what you want out of a conversation, saying that you're the one that, in our mind team, it's my turn to bring up a challenge or discuss a project or ask for feedback or whatever. Just setting the tone of what you want and watching how people receive or understanding what they're saying to you tells you where you might need to make an adjustment. And that's an easy thing to do when you think about it a little bit. And it's easy because you can adjust instead of reacting. You can just adjust. It's like, I'm not hitting the point.
Okay.
So you ask a question, what don't you understand? Or, I'm not sure that you're getting what I'm saying. Could somebody give me some feedback? And you check in.
Okay. Is there a way to practice, I guess, is there a way to practice either how you receive or practice listening? Because sometimes I would think it comes down to listening.
Yeah. A technique I just learned, I guess we all know this technique, but I just learned it by the name double click. When use your mouse on the computer, you double click to get down another level.
Those of us that still use mouses.
Mouses, yes,
because
that's
now
true.
it's like swiping. But...
Yes, yes, and maybe you have to swipe twice. I don't know. But really, what it is checking in. So you say something, you're not quite sure if it worked or not or whatever. You come back around, and you do this in your interviews. You do this very well. Is come back around and it's like, so let me just say this again in a different way. Let me just check in and see if I heard you correctly. Let me just see if this is what you meant. By doing that, it gives everybody a chance to reflect, step back a second, disengage from what, could take you in another direction.
Okay.
And practice that with all kinds of things. Just do it when there's not something that is critical in front of you. One of the easiest ways, if you're around kids, is they'll say something about, I don't like you anymore or whatever. And it's the same kind of repeat it back. And you don't do it parenting. Parroting is, it's just, I'm feeling that you, whatever. So could I ask you such and such? So you're bringing it to a different place so that you can have a different understanding, a different conversation.
Because we talked about our mind teams, and that's a group thing where we're group helping each other versus one-on-one conversation. Does word use is that influence different when it's in a group and you're saying almost the same thing as when you're talking to somebody one-on-one? Is there a difference in interpretation? Is there a group think that influences how words are received?
Yeah, there are different dynamics. When you're dealing one-on-one with people, sometimes that can be easier to come to a place where you have some type of mutual understanding. When you have two or more people, you're bringing in a lot of experience, a lot of reaction, a lot of, ways of thinking that everybody in the group may not share. And that adds another layer of this, how do we listen? How do we relate? How can we deepen the conversation? You have to understand where everybody is before you do that.
Okay.
So it's that checking in again.
And maybe one last question is, so is there a scientific, I know you study the brain somewhat, I didn't kind of ask you to come prepared to ask this question, but I have off the top of your head, is there a scientific, what goes on in your brain when you hear something versus translate it versus, feel then what it meant? I know there's the hippocampus and the rhino campus and the whale campus and the different parts of the brain.
Well, let's not get into the rhino campus.
I don't know.
We have different parts of our brain that are specifically do different things. We usually think of our brain as working together to come up with a consensus. It doesn't. So just really basically, there's a part of the brain, and it's the subconscious mind, if you will, that holds on to everything up until about the age of 7 or 8. So scientifically, you're just taking everything in.
Okay, like a sieve, like a sponge.
Right.
Okay.
Your mind does not know the difference between what you imagine, what somebody tells you, what somebody remembers your experience to be, or what actually happened.
Wow.
So a lot of times you're not sure why you're having a particular reaction. It's like, why is that? I mean, house, that's just a normal word. Why in this situation am I freaked out by that word?
Okay.
So that's one part of the brain. The other part of the brain is, it's the conscious part, the part where you see that something's going on that you don't understand. It's the part that tries to make sense of things. And so there is neurochemistry. And going back to the emotion, the neurochemistry that happens, if people use words in a way that for you trigger some emotion, then automatically you're going to a place that you're not sure why you're there, but you're there. And it's cortisol and it's oxytocin. Cortisol brings you kind of down to the bad place, and the oxytocin kinds of lifts you up.
Okay.
So sometimes when you get that mixed feeling when you're in a group and you're receiving information, or when you're with somebody that you're very close to and they say something and you feel like, oh my God, why did they change? It's really that neurochemical reaction happening.
Okay. And so a little bit of shameless promotion as we close. What do you do to help people with their understanding and their listening better, and how do people reach you?
Well, I am a mindset coach and a possibility engineer, and what that really is working with people to understand what's happening in the way that they're thinking and why it's going on, because there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is doing what it's supposed to do. So if there's something that you're confused about, something that you don't understand why you're acting differently than what you want, and you want to get better results, you can contact me through the website, which is landofpossibility.com, or at Renee, Renee, at landofpossibility.com. Give me a call, tell me what's going on, and I'll give you some direction, guidance, resources, suggestions.
Excellent. Thank you, Renee. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
And so if you liked what we shared with you here, connect with me at sylviahenderson.com. So you got 2 places to go to get more, like you just watched today, to engage with me, and to allow me to transform your ideas into action and income. So with that, I invite you to watch next time and to make a great day.